Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. The Itch, written by cranky Uncle Morty. Bill woke up in a mental fog with a strong taste of disinfectant in his mouth and a loud humming in his ears. He tried to open his eyes, only to see blinding, purplish light. Instantly, he became aware of the fact that he was completely naked and covered in some type of gel mist. "Oh, what is this? What's going on?" he shrieked, as he slid into a nearby corner, trying his best to conceal himself. A few moments pass by as a mister hisses and sprays more gel. "Stay calm, human Bill." It was the ship's octopoid nurse, Gurgle. "They suspect that you have been infected with the soon-suckered dermal mites. You are lucky we caught them early enough. You won't likely lose more than 10 to 15% of your dermal layer." She peeped out in sing-song tone. She dealt with all of the healthcare for the humans on board because she taught herself to speak English and Spanish watching old human television shows. "We are going to have you as ripe as raincoats in no time, puppy." "Why do you think I have dermal mites?" The exasperated engineer inquired, not in the mood to correct the absolute disaster of a colloquialism she tried to pull off. "Your assistant Churkle noticed the instinctive involuntary tearing of your epidermis after your visit to Sunka and managed to hit the panic button in time. Due to your status as a heavy-willed species, the protocol is to sedate you for your and our safety before the beginning of the treatment. You have been placed in a sterile isolation room." The treatment was starting to burn as the iodine smart gel tried to disinfect microscopic invaders that were not present, finding only human hair follicles. Bill managed to brace himself against the wall and start feeling his way closer to the intercom. "Churkle is a Whoopsian. What does he know? Has the doctor run any tests?" The 3-foot-tall aliens looked like a Shetland pony, and a red panda had a drunken tryst and spoke like they were raised on a steady diet of amphetamines. They were not known for their brilliance, but their small size, low food requirements, and ability to go for 3 to 4 days without sleep made them essential in every engine room that could find one. Due to such high demand, many times captains would have to settle for one with, less than a stellar critical thinking skills. Churkle was a marginal example, at best. Assistant Churkle suffered an attack of these very mites a few years ago, which is why he has those green fur patches. He was only trying to save your life," responded Gurgle. "That really explains why his fur looked like someone attacked him with a paintball gun, and it never washed out." "There is really no time to wait. Once you reach the state of involuntary epidermis tearing, the mites are getting ready to hatch and enter their airborne stage. You have some gelatinous crewmates. Do you want to risk their lives? I would expect you to be a responsible adult and accept your quarantine and treatment." "What do you mean by involuntary epidermis tearing?" Bill began to feel around his body that he could not feel any tears or cuts that he did not expect. Working in an engine room was always hazardous, and he had a few nicks on his hands. "I don't remember any of this." "This is a slight effect of the anesthetic vapor compound." That one gave Bill a chortle. "I'll turn off the ultraviolet lights and let you watch the video recapturing," she said with a smug air. "I'll show you exactly how your cookie crumbled." When Bill opened his eyes, he could see Gurgle in the window wearing a jaunty little nurse's hat with a red cross on it, clearly copied from a World War I movie that she had seen, and flashing her stripy pattern of aquamarine and lavender, which roughly translated to, "You don't want to test me." The video monitor to the left and just above the wall-mounted speaker sounded a tone and started playing a video of Bill stepping off the transport pod and into the airlock. Waving to Chorkle and his mate Megatron, cartoons from Terra's 1980s are insanely popular in the Woobs, played during prime time as human animated dramas. As he began to speak to them, his left hand reached over to scratch the minor itch on his right arm, which was carrying an overnight bag. "There, right there," squeaked the octopoid nurse, now flashing her dark blue ribbons of triumph and white bands of righteous indignation. "You scraped off at least 5 micrograms of skin." Bill then watched as Churkle, wide-eyed and panicked, shoved his mate back, sending her bowling over her tail and screaming in terror as he hit the emergency lockdown and sealed Bill in the airlock. He now vaguely remembered pounding on the glass and threatening to have Churkle stuffed and mounted as a footstool before passing out. "How is Megatron?" inquired Bill, genuinely concerned about the powder blue Whoopsian. She often baked too many treats, and the extras always found their way to Bill and the rest of the engineering crew. "Relatively unharmed, but she took what was enough to cause premature molting. Next time you see her, she will likely be a different color, and possibly another gender." She picked up a clipboard on her desk. "The boys in weapons maintenance started a pool, and there are still a few spots open at 200 credits per slot. Put me down for brown and submale." Bill switched to pleading tone. "Listen, you've got this wrong. I was just scratching an itch. Harmless irritation of the hair follicles." "I saw your famous Terran movie, The 7-Year Itch, and at no point did humans scrape off their dermal layers. If they did not do this once in 7 Terran cycles, I doubt your claims. You are pulling my feelers, Engineer Broski." Bill was exasperated, and the use of his last name was an indication that he would have to reach up the chain of command. "Let me speak to the captain," Bill demanded, as a tuft of his beard fell to the ground. The captain of the Flaccid Rebuke, a reconditioned 30-year-old human military surplus ship, was the right head of the 2-headed Talgorian male, Piz. Only 10% of the Talgorians had 2 heads, and the most of them left their home planet for fame and fortune to avoid double taxation as the 2 individuals. Being a 6-foot-tall furry ostrich with teeth and an extra eye on each head made them a relatively easy adjustment for most humans to work under. Piz was a fair and honest captain. Soon, however, it was Mitt. The left head was visible on the screen. "The captain is busy, Engineer Broski. Just relax and let the treatment do its work. You should be out of quarantine in about 2 weeks." It did not help that his left head was ship's doctor. It was at this moment Bill knew that he needed to weaponize the most dangerous tool in humanity's arsenal: bureaucracy. "Listen here, buddy," demanded the nude and increasingly hairless engineer. "I do not have mites. Scratching is normal human behavior. If you do not free me in this instance, I will contact the Terran Embassy on Sunka and file an emergency ID-10T form from the ambassador. If you won't listen and free me, our law marines will." Terran law marines were the most feared of all humanity. Humans who were both fully trained marine combat troopers and lawyers registered with the Free Galactic Council. Most with onboard AI paralegals filing lawsuits for them mid-combat. They were the only humans that could shoot you and then sue you for interfering with their bullets' freedom of association and for the firearms post-traumatic stress. The doctor was visibly shaken, but demanded from the engineer, "I want to free you, but how can you explain the reaction of your crewmate?" Bill sighed and said, "There's a fairly common human saying, never trust a green Whoopsian." End of story. Story number 2. A single reply, written by a teller of tall tales. When we sought war with the humans, it was for petty reasons, unnecessary materials, unneeded land. But we, the Gorvan, we were greedy. We targeted a small outpost planet at the far reaches. It seemed simple enough. Arrive, broadcast the surrender message, and walk in. All routine. As we approached in our warships, we found the planet to have a title. "Translator, what is the planet's name?" I had asked. The translator seemed to hesitate before simply saying,
Florida, too.
I'd scoffed and said, "Broadcast the message."
Broadcasting.
The translator replied. I calmly waited for the small planet's reply. Eventually, the translator beckoned me over, worrying in the clicks of his mandibles as he said,
They replied, if you want it, come and take it.
I barked a laugh and ordered the navigator to take us into the atmosphere. As we lowered, our troop carriers descended to the surface. I opened a display and watched the commander's bionic speed. The streets of the large city they had landed in were empty. Vehicles and detritus dropped like they had no owners. Through the camera, I watched as sputtering metal cylinder landed in front of the commander, who reached down and picked up the strange object to scan it. The sound of the explosion made me jump back as the feed darkened, switching to a ground troops helmet as they took flight. As they rose to the air, the detritus and trash they had passed shifted. Humans, armed with large bore antique firearms, rose from the trash concealing them and opened up. Their combustion weapons created a racket as another feed went dark. It cycled through a few more empty feeds as I quivered where I stood. Eventually, the feed popped up, showing a lone commander's bionic speed as he threw down his weapons and surrendered to the group of 6 heavily armed humans. Each translator module spitting,
What elite military force is this? The Gorvan haven't been defeated in millennia.
The human replied, and my translator instinct, Military force? We're just civilians. Didn't realize it'd be this easy. Anyway, my one to GTFO. The Marines are on their way. I slowly asked my translator,
GTFO?
He gulped and said, Get the fusk out. I nodded and said, Do as they say. I don't want to meet these, Marines. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just want to give a quick thanks to the Tier 5 patrons and channel members. Alithia, Barky, Fudic Yol, Cam Maxwell, Caspar Onholtz, White Van 420, Lord Asrakal, Arcalian, and Oakfield.